People have a really narrow definition of what racism is.
I think racism is just like when you are not being fair to every single race.
It's the tendency of human beings to qualify people by their appearance.
You know you're different. It's somehow like that.
In most Americans' minds, racism is always individual, it's intentional, and it's overt.
During 9/11, I was probably in 3rd grade. I remember being called a terrorist here and there.
The thing is that racism takes on an astonishing number of forms.
Voter discrimination.
Our prison system and in our courts.
Salary, of course.
Many of them are unconscious and they're systemic and they're hidden. Hi everyone, I'm Rinku Sen, and it's great to see some old friends in the room. I have been working on these issues for about 30 years. I was a community organizer for 15 years, and at the end of my time in organizing, I started to feel somewhat frustrated. Race isn't the only system that matters to our lives, but I haven't come across an issue yet that did not have a racial dimension. Even though I was proud of many of the things that we had won locally, I felt like we had really lost influence on big issue areas: policing, education, housing. We don't just want to spin our wheels, we want to actually achieve a society where these core values are present for everybody. I had already been working at Race Forward as the communications director, and I wanted to be involved more in the ideas, so I took myself to journalism school, and I learned a lot about how do you change the way the public thinks about something.
What's happening in this picture?
The first one says, a young man walks through chest-deep floodwater after looting a grocery store in New Orleans on Tuesday. The other says, 2 residents wade through chest-deep water after finding bread and soda from a local grocery store.
Fascinating, right?
My family came over to the States from India when I was 5 and a half in 1972. We came to Ellenville, New York. There were no other Indian immigrants. It was a really white existence, and things would happen and I would largely have to figure them out by myself. In order to survive and make it through, I had to suppress most notions of myself as a person of color. I went to college at Brown University in 1983. In my second year, in the first week of school, there was a racial incident on campus. And the next day, there was a rally. My friends wanted me to go to the rally, and I said no. They said, Rinku, you're not a girl anymore, you're a woman now, and you're not a minority, you're a person of color. The next day, I went to the rally, and for the first time since we had immigrated, I felt like I was with people that I belonged with. Our theory of change, and mine, is that in order to make large-scale change, you need an ecosystem of people doing different things. The key to building workplaces and communities that look the way our nation looks is not actually to have a diversity frame, but to have an equity frame. Diversity only speaks to variety and the kinds of people who are in the room. It doesn't actually speak to power and what people are able to do once they are in the room. We'd all like to solve the problem and move on, but the way to move on is to actually make progress, and there is so much progress that needs to be made.
When I was in junior high school in New York, I was bused to an Italian neighborhood from a neighborhood that was predominantly black. And every morning our school bus was stoned by parents because they didn't want us in their neighborhoods.
So we are in a strategy where we really have to reboot how the movement talks about and thinks about racism in order to reboot how the country talks and thinks about racism.
If you have come here to help me, you are wasting our time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Keep that with you when you leave here today.
How do you change a culture?
So one way to change a culture is to do the same institutional analysis of the culture.
The question that we start with isn't who's a racist. The question we start with is what is causing racial inequity. Thank you so much for coming today. We're going to be at this probably for the rest of our lives, but we can make it so that 10 years from now we're working on a different set of problems. That's how we can peel layers off the racial justice project that we all want to take on.